Hi there, how are you today? That's good. I have here one of the old books that I've done in one of my other videos, and today what I wanted to do was a little something for Easter. My little way of just saying thank you to you for watching my videos. And this story is called One Easter Day, and as I say, it's from an old book that I have, which dates back to Christmas 1924. Okay, lovely old pages. One Easter Day by A.T.M. It was not quite the ordinary sort of Easter Sunday. Perhaps for that reason I remember it so clearly. It was 5 years ago, and I was just 13, only a child, of course, though I did not think so then. I was at a school in North Switzerland while father and mother were in India. It was rather fun, that school, when I had got over my first homesickness. The mistresses certainly looked after us more than enough and scolded us in a frenzied fashion if we did not talk French, and for many other small reasons, as if we were infants. But they meant well and mixed no end of jolly excursions and parties with a round of lessons and the scoldings. So we took the rough with the smooth and managed to have a very good time. One of these excursions happened on Easter Sunday, 2 months after my arrival at school. We girls, some 30 of us, had been to the big church on the hill to morning service, but after midday dinner we had been told we should be excused from the usual afternoon service in the temple to Ba, and that those who liked might walk to the forest to have a game with Easter eggs, given us that morning, followed by tea in a chalet on the mountain. There was a general shout-out that was for a perfect spring day, and we were all glad to escape being shut up in the dark, stuffy temple for an hour and a half, sleepily blinking at a few old folk and the boys and the girls from the other schools, the only people who ever went to that church. It did not take us long to change into walking skirts and sports coats and collect our eggs and assemble in the hall ready for the start. Privately, I thought the suggested game with eggs seemed very silly and childish, but I did not want to say so, for one never knew what the dames might overhear. They had the sharpest of ears and eyes that I had ever met, nor in such a case what devastating torrent of explanations and questions might follow, with perhaps a final recommendation to me, as an old and superior person, to betake myself to church while the rest played in the forest. No, I took no risks, but tucked my eggs in my coat pockets and set off with Hedwig Z, a lively girl from Schaffhausen, as my companion. The eggs, I should explain, were ordinary hen's eggs, hard-boiled and coloured in different shades, 2 of each. Each girl had 2 of the same colour, but different from those of any other girl. Mine were dark blue. As I was the latest comer by one, my turn to choose was the next but last. The last eggs left in the basket were a dull brown colour. Tony D, a Russian girl who arrived at school a week after me, had those, and didn't she look grumpy when she took them? She was a queer mouse of a girl, Tony, very small, although she was nearly 12, with a long white face, short dark hair, and odd almond-shaped eyes. She rarely spoke to anyone who did not speak to her, and we thought her a little stuck up. We found afterwards she was only shy and lonely. Poor child. Tony walked with Mademoiselle L, who was in charge that day, at the tail of the crocodile, and even she looked almost gay when she stepped out of the house into the sunshine and walked away at a swinging pace across the market square. The single bell at the Temple de Ba was clanging noisily, and Selma H, a big bonny Swede, who led the procession with Angelica K, a delicate-looking Greek girl, stopped as she passed the open door to the church and peeped in. Then Angelica stopped and peeped too, and so did Hedwig, and I. It looked very dark inside, but we could see a row of schoolgirls seated near the door, and Hedwig waved her basket to them. Next moment, Mademoiselle was upon us with an excited "En avant, Mademoiselle!" followed by a frantic lecture about disturbing the congregation. I was frankly terrified, but Selma just gave me a shrug and a smile. Me figurez-vous, Mademoiselle, quelle bénédiction pour au devoir, une petite distraction, said she, and Mademoiselle said no more. Nobody can be angry for long with a person who has a smile like Selma's. What a walk that was, first through the narrow streets of high houses where mattresses and blankets hung out of some windows to the air, and people's heads out of others to stare, past Battery Hill where roundabouts were whirling and a band playing, for Easter Sunday is a real day of fete in Switzerland, and then over the bridge and out into the open countryside. Have you ever been to Switzerland in springtime? If not, go. Go as soon as possible, even if it means doing without a new summer frock and a hat, or giving up the pictures for a whole season. No one can tell you properly how wonderfully beautiful the flowers are, nor how delicious is the air, nor make you understand by words how thrilling it can be to walk through a dark forest of giant firs, and then suddenly come upon a view of glistening white mountains, with the sun shining on them out of a blue sky that holds no clouds. I am not going to try to make you understand, though. It's enough to say that our walk was tremendously exciting, although nothing important happened. We went across acres of green pasture where cows were feeding, watched by children or old women to keep them from straying. There were no fences or hedges, and we passed tiny hamlets on the mountainside where people came out of their little low houses and offered us flowers and carved wood animals and chalets. And we tramped for nearly 2 miles along a road through a narrow gorge with a high precipice on one side and a brawling stream just on the other. At one part of this road, Mademoiselle made us walk in single file close to the face of the cliff, because we could hear the rumble of the avalanches above us, like the distant rolling of thunder, and at times pedestrians in the middle of the road had been struck by falling boulders of masses of frozen snow. Nothing fell when we were there, but it was very thrilling. The gorge ended in a steep and stony footpath leading up to the forest, which was our destination, and where our game was about to be played. But before I describe that, I must tell you about 2 funny little things that happens on the gorge road. Funny, at any rate, to us, English girls who were not used to such ways. As I said before, Easter Sunday was a fete day, so no end of people were out and enjoying themselves. We met a great many, and among them several bands of young men marching and carrying banners and wearing embroidered scarves in bright colours. Students' societies, most of them, Mademoiselle said. Nearly every Swiss boy joins some society as soon as he leaves school. One of these bands, whom she called gymnasts, must have started out of their excursion early in the day and have met some of their time in the village. For when we met them, they were returning to the town, very hilarious, and marching none too steadily. Some of them were carrying big bunches of wild flowers, which they offered to the girls. Of course, Mademoiselle was very angry at that. Foreigners do get so angry and excited about trifles. She rushed at the captain of the band, simply bristling with indignation, and talked about insults and liberties, and then one of the boys something about a villepule, and all the rest just laughed and began to cackle. Poor Mademoiselle almost wept with rage. She hurried us on, but it was some time before we were out of the hearing of the cackles. Fortunately for our wounded pride, we met another student society a little farther on, an orderly one this time, and Mademoiselle poured out to the dignified young captain the whole story of her grievance. He was immensely polite and attentive, and his followers crowded round him to listen. Of course, the girls thought them frightfully interesting. They had the loveliest green and gold scarves and banners, and they seemed quite interested in us too. I noticed especially Selma. Then, when Mademoiselle had quite finished talking and waving her hands and pointing, and had described the colours of the gymnasts and everything they had said and done, the captain and most of the other boys did a good deal of talking and waving and pointing too, and the captain assured Mademoiselle that the offenders should be pursued and brought to account. Then They all made their grand bows to her and to us and marched away, and we walked on. Hedwig and I looked back at the next turn of the road to see if they were still in sight. They were. In fact, they seemed to have gone a very short distance, and most of them were looking back too. We thought they would not like to overtake the gymnasts if they did not march faster. You may be sure that we all did a lot of talking after such an adventure. Mademoiselle quite purred with satisfaction, and said it had been a pleasure to meet des jeunes gens comme il faut. And then, just before we reached the forest, there was another small excitement, and of all unexpected people, it was that mouse, Tony, who caused it. The younger girls were comparing their eggs and talking about them. I heard some of them remarks. "My eggs are green, the green of the beautiful pastures in Holland," said Lena, a Dutch girl. "I chose blue, blue of the sky of Italy." This was from Juliana, one of the twins from Palmero. "Mine are gold, like the hair of that beau jeune capitaine," gurgled Madeline, who came from the French border and was fat and a little sentimental. And then Tony electrified us by holding out her eggs and shouting, "And mine are brown, ugly, dull brown, and I detest them, and I detest you all." And lifting her arms with a sudden gesture, she flung the eggs into the road and just burst into tears. With a great many la-las and shh and oh, Mademoiselle picked them up, brushed off some scraps of broken shell, dusted them, and put them in the reticule. Then she took the weeping Tony by the arm and walked on, telling us to follow, which we did rather silently, for it was not very pleasant to find that one of us was this unhappy as Tony seemed to be, when the rest of us were feeling so particularly jolly. We heard Mademoiselle talking and talking for a long time, and then Tony calmed down and began to talk too. She confided to me afterwards, when I knew her better and liked her very much, that Mademoiselle had been very kind and had told her she would never enjoy school life if she shut herself up in herself. She thought her own feelings before anything else, and that the only wise way was to take things as they came and make the best of them. I told you the dames meant well. That really was the last excitement that afternoon, though by no means the end of the fun. Far from that being silly and childish, the egg game proved most amusing. A small clearing in the forest was chosen as our hunting ground. Mademoiselle sat herself upon a log in the middle, and we girls were set to conceal our eggs, each girl with her own, as best we could without actually hiding them from view anywhere within the fixed limits. As everyone was seeking and hiding place at the same time, a good deal of bluff was necessary to prevent the other people from spotting where you popped them. I slipped mine into a hole in a tree trunk, where they were partly hidden by some drooping leaves. Having concealed her eggs, each girl returned to Mademoiselle, and when all were ready, we were again sent out, this time to find as many eggs as possible, our own excepted. A time limit of 1/4 of an hour was fixed for each search. Points were to be awarded for the finder of every egg discovered and the hider of every undiscovered egg. It may appear foolish, but it really was such great sport, especially in a beautiful forest on such a lovely spring day. We all got very excited as we climbed and scrambled and peeked and peered in all sorts of likely and unlikely places. At the end of every 5 minutes, Mademoiselle announced the passing of the time, and when the 1/4 of an hour was up, she ordered an instantaneous halt and directed us to bring our spoils to her. No fewer than 58 out of the 60 eggs had been discovered. Some girls had found none. Others had bags of 4s and 5s. I had 2 only. To our surprise, little Tony had the biggest score. She handed in no fewer than 8 eggs, and her brown eggs were the only undiscovered ones. Everyone patted her on the back and congratulated her, and Mademoiselle told her to show us where she had hidden her eggs. To our astonishment, instead of leading us to some tree or bush or bank, Tony quietly pointed to the hat on her head. It was a brown straw hat, and very becoming, and upon it, held firmly in 2 wide loops of ribbon, were the missing eggs, well in view. but quite unnoticeable on account of their colour. Then there were more congratulations and pats and biens and bravos until the child became quite pink with pleasure. She received 6 points for each undiscovered egg, so her score was 20, far above anyone else's. Her prize was the privilege of choosing what we should have for our dinner, which was the next thing on our programme, and I am bound to say she did it very well. Never did I enjoy a meal more than the hearty one we consumed at the long deal table at the chalet restaurant to which Mademoiselle now conducted us, café au lait, boiling hot in strange handleless cups, crisp rolls of bread as long as your arm, fresh butter and cream and delicious cheese. Dish after dish of them straight from the frying pan, which were things that dreams could only be made of. I could not forget hard-boiled eggs, which were pulled and divided amongst us and made a welcome first course. We were very hungry, as other hunters are reputed to be. It is not perhaps quite the right thing to end a story with a description of eating and drinking, even though what was happening to us was important on that Christmas day. So I will just mention that the walk went off quite smoothly. We were all rather quiet after our excursion, and nothing unexpected occurred, and Mademoiselle did not lecture us even once. Next day, the captain of the gymnast and the 2 of his men called the school and apologised for the discourtesy on the previous day. He explained they had all had too much at the fete. Mademoiselle explained that this meant they had taken too much of this cider. I suppose she thought it quite a good excuse, for she was very amiable with the boys, gave each them a glass of her raspberry syrup, as she kept on very special high occasions, and shook hands with them as they were parting. So everything ended happily. And there we are. That's the very old story called One Easter Day from this very old book. Okay, let's just enjoy these pages. So lovely. And if you enjoy the sound of paper or flipping through pages, please do check out some of my other videos on the One Woman ASMR. And I hope you all have a lovely Easter. And I'll see you very soon.